welcome back, everybody, to the HRO Adventures Podcast, episode number 9. We've survived 9 of these now, Rusty.
We have. Somebody would hope that we know what we're doing now.
Well, we always say it's getting better, but it couldn't possibly get worse, right?
This is true.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. Episode 9. We have a super special guest. And, Rusty, why don't you introduce our guest?
All right. Well, Eric, it's nice to have you on. We have talked about you on several of the podcasts. It's nice to have you in person with us today. So everybody knows Eric is the habitat specialist. I will let him tell us who he is officially.
There you go.
But he works on a lot of habitat stuff up here in Douglas County. So I've known Eric since he started working up here in Douglas County, which was at least 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, known each other quite a while now and worked each other on projects and seeing the ups and downs of what's going on around here. And so it's really good to have somebody with Eric's experience and his knowledge and his time that he's given to us here.
And at the end of the day, he's a hunter and fisherman as well, so he's partaking in all this awesome stuff that he's working on for his day job. So, well, welcome.
So, Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so it's actually been 33 years.
33 years.
Wow.
And
25 was
so
good.
it was pretty in the ballpark. So when I started, your dad was on my interview committee.
That's right.
He was our landowner. That our agency had they wanted a landowner on the interview committee because we were going to be working with landowners. And I'll tell you a little story about that in a minute. But when I first started, I was hired as a habitat specialist, so you have that right. But then they redid our job class to make us biologists, and so now I'm a private lands biologist is my official title.
Okay.
And so I've been that for 25 years. So, and now I'm been doing that for 33 years. And I'm kind of rare that I've worked in Douglas County. My work area's gotten a little bit bigger, but when I first started, it was Douglas County alone. And now I work Douglas County, Okanagan County, and then Northern Grant County. So we have less people and more area to cover. So I don't get to Okanagan County because the priority for the agency has always been Douglas County because of its unique habitats and species down here and landowner relationships and all that stuff. So, but back to my interview, your dad asked, and I always remember what the question your dad asked me, and I don't know if you know this question, but it's rang true. It's more true what he asked today, reflecting back on that day when I got hired. But the question is what is human habitat? And the reason he asked that was because he's a farmer, and a rancher, and he wanted. It always was kind of a strange question because I can't even remember how I answered it. But I think after 33 years in this job, I'd probably answer it a lot differently because of my experience now in understanding landowners and and what the livelihoods that they rely on the landscape and the habitat that all the critters in Douglas County live in. And so it's now, as I reflect back on my career, you think about that question, because that's kind of, what got me in the door. And, we are a pretty large growing state and we're losing habitat right and left, but there is a human element to it to where you need landowners for conservation. And without that, you don't have a lot of skin in the game because you need those relationships to build on those that conservation model, and work with landowners and help them understand what's important on their properties and all that stuff. So, but so I do all kinds of fun stuff today. I was out delivering biological control agents we have some weevils for some toad flax today. I had I ordered 3,300 and I think I delivered 3,000 of them today. So, and to landowners that had problems, working with the conservation district. So I was up early though, doing grouse surveys. So I was up right before I talked to you, I was out chasing down sharptails and
doing sharptail leks.
Well, we have some collared grouse that we brought in from British Columbia, and we released them up on the reservation, working with the Colville tribes, and a lot of them have now flown the river and landed in Douglas County. And so we're tracking them down. They're on different private landowners' properties, and we're trying to figure out why they picked that spot and what they're up to. Gotcha. And we have some mortality signals where we pick up the dead grouse and try to figure out what caused the mortality. But it's all part of the process, the research science that we're doing on grouse in Douglas County and Okanagan and the reservation.
You focusing just on sharptails or
the release, the trap and transfer project was just for sharptails.
Just for sharptails.
And that's kind of where we're trying to increase the genetic makeup by releasing birds from British Columbia down here into smaller populations and trying to grow it out. That's kind of the premise. So we tried Okanagan for a few years. We put some out at Swanton Lakes this year and also the reservation. They all have populations of grouse, and it's just British Columbia has been really gracious over the years to get those birds and allowing us that relationship. But it's a huge project because you got to bring birds across the border. You have avian influenza stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and you got transport issues and all kinds of stuff. So
well, now are we trading with them? Or are we sending birds?
It's just it's kind of a mutual agreement that we have with them. But they have a lot of sharptails up there in the mountains out of British Columbia. So
now, when you say collared, is it a leg band that you're putting on?
No, it's a GPS collar. So it's live data that we actually get from satellites, and we know their location. I think it's every 4 hours. Don't quote me on that, but it sent out a signal every so often, and then it should, if the bird dies or killed, it's a different signal.
Right.
So we know.
So there's actually a collar you can put on that won't slip back over the head?
Right. Well, there's some bib mounts and they've gotten way better than they used to. They were kind of bulky and that's not even my job. That's the research guys. So don't ask me any more questions.
You don't have to saddle them up.
No, I'm the closest biologist that can. That when they show me a dot on a map, I know where it's at because I've been out here the longest.
Right.
And I know who the landowner is, so I can say, hey, I need to go out there and find the bird. It would take them a lot longer to have to make those contacts and stuff. So I'm kind of the guy on the ground that gets to do all that.
Now the technology is better than the old walk out there with a headset and an antenna.
Way better, but you're still putting the bird at risk whenever you put but the information that you gather is so awesome. I mean, it's there's something innate about grouse. They just know they're really their homing mechanism. I mean, they're landing on historic lek sites in some cases.
Oh, wow.
Where we've never had grouse. So why would a bird from Canada released on the reservation fly and land on a spot on a map, which actually happened to be, and I think it's all habitat related. They're just keying in on certain features or topography or stuff like that. So,
but none of them went home.
Back to Canada?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at all the data, but I think most of them are still hanging on the reservation. There's just a few outliers that have come across. So,
well, I know when we've tagged in the past, and I want to say it was sage grouse, not sharptails, but I could be wrong. But we had some of those move from Douglas County to Lincoln County to down to the firing range in Yakima County and back, and I mean that they had a couple of birds that were just like crazy.
It's amazing how far they will wander.
Yeah.
And it's usually right after the release, and then they kind of settle down.
Do they? Oh, okay.
In spots. But what interests me is when you find a sharptail that's never been here, did they find some birds and they're hanging out with them that we don't know about?
Oh.
So we're just trying to figure out, are we missing an opportunity to on some grouse that we don't know, or somewhere?
Right.
But a lot of time, today I found the grouse that I walked right to the area and flushed it, and I looked in my binos and I could see the collar sticking off, so I know it's the same one.
Same one. Nice.
So that's how accurate they are. I mean, I just drove out there looking at my phone with the GPS, the live data, and knowing he was there at least 4 hours ago, and walked right and flushed him. So it's pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy. That is way cool.
It's kind of scary, to be honest.
Were they tracking you or your phone?
Big brother, yeah.
The Find My Grouse app.
But it's really intriguing that we have a huge effort trying, especially in Douglas County, because we have such a low number of birds in the state, and we're trying to keep tabs on, and create any opportunity there is to enhance what we have now. Right. And our population last year was on a good increase, sage grouse wise. This year they were harder to find because I do sage grouse surveys too, because I'm kind of the local guy, and then sharp-tail surveys too on the leks that we know where they're at. So
right.
So a lot of early mornings. My wife hates it because she's like, oh, when are you going to be done? Because I'm always getting up at 4 o'clock.
Oh, man.
She works at 6:30, so I'm like, it's okay. It'll be over soon, but so the life of a biologist isn't all it's cracked up to be, but it's no different than turkey hunting or going out hunting early so I really enjoy getting up early and going out and hunting, and working too, but it's no different,
Yeah.
But,
so tell me, you talked about the landowner. Dad was one of the ones that was on your hiring committee, and then when you got started here, meeting those landowners, and now you've been here 33 years, so you're starting to see that next generation. Like, you've always known me and my brothers because of Dad, but now we've kind of taken over what Dad used to do, and he's not doing as much, and so that's happened all around the county. I mean, 30 years of moving. You're not dealing with the same landowner.
Well,
per se.
And I always tell the story because I didn't know, when I first started, I didn't know anything about farming. I didn't know anything about, certain things. And it was important to me to understand what it was like to be a farmer. So you guys graciously let me follow you around during harvest, and I got to eat at your table and say grace and all that stuff, and it was really hit home. And I tell that story because I mentor a lot of staff, and we do a lot of informational type stuff. Like everybody still, what do you do? What do you what's a private lands biologist do? What do you do? They just don't understand it, and it's basically I should have gotten a degree in sociology, because that's what it's like. It's really it's a different world. But when I tell the story of going out, meeting landowners, creating relationships, sitting down at a farmer's table, understanding where their food comes from, saying grace with them, understanding the hard work that they put into putting that food on the table, how they make a living, all that stuff, the struggles they go through, and understanding that and trying to put that in perspective to how you build a relationship with the landowner, and how you try to, start that from a fish and wildlife side of it was huge to do that. Now, like you say, those relationships, since I've been kind of a homebody and haven't left this area, it's even tougher on me, because a lot of the landowners I've become friends with, and our second generation landowners are passing away. We just lost Leroy Sanderson a couple of days ago, and I remember working with him, and I know the family, I know everybody, and I'll probably get choked up here, but I mean, it's really a personal effort, and those are relationships that I created, even though they weren't just for work, but they were just to do my job better, make my job easier. But you end up now the third generation, they're a totally different monkey. I mean, they are really
monkey's a good term.
There was the farmer that come home from college and said, "Hey, Dad, we got to do this different." And Dad's like, "What's wrong with the old way?" And so you get into these conversations about technology, and that's been huge in farming and, making farmers more efficient. And so then I got doing some stuff with USDA and being trained in, doing some of the certifications there in helping. We had a contract with NRCS helping write farm bill plans and stuff like that. And so understanding some of that process on the federal side and trying to make the connections with private landowners and figuring out that, oh, this is easy. All you got to do is, show them how to do this and that and talk to them about what they can do. But there's not really a private lands program in the federal side of some of these agencies. And so they didn't have that same relationship that I had. So I was actually, I wouldn't say more successful, but it was easier for me to have conversations with landowners about what to do or what's expected of them, And so then they started paying attention to what I was doing, and they're like, hey, could you come and we have some new staff, and we'd like for you to do a talk about, this, and so it was actually part of their training, and I'd get called in and help them do stuff.
Nice.
And mainly just to kind of mentor them about relationships and communication and what to do, what not to do, all that stuff. And so, but the first guy I contacted was Lloyd McLean.
Yep.
And it was the first file I pulled out of the box, and I said, hey, I called him up this is pre-cell phone, so it had been just some phone. Called him up and said, hey, Lloyd, Eric Braaten, Farm Fish and Wildlife, and I got your name. You had a Habitat agreement with us, and he said, listen here, you little, so-and-so, you need to get out here and talk to us landowners face-to-face. And he hung up the phone. And I'm like, oh boy, what kind of job did I get into? But what a great first lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And actually went out and spent time with them, and I found out throughout the years that my best tool was my ears, just listening. Because most landowners just want to talk. Mm-hmm. They want you to listen to them. And then you'll have time to talk. But they just want to kind of get stuff off their chest or talk about something, an old grievance or whatever it is. Yeah. But, your ears, my ears probably have a workout, gotten a workout over the years.
Wow.
Ain't that the truth?
I love it.
Well, and that's, with the leases that I have for the hunting, same way. You got to go sit down with the landowner and get him to sign the lease. And none of the leases are the same. All the leases are, you sit down and you let them tell you what they want to do on their ground, and it's not me going in and telling you, okay, this is the program, and you've done that very well for the Fish and Wildlife coming in. And when we did some of the habitat plots that we've done and some of the spring developments that you've come in and you've done on our property, on my family's property and stuff, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to come do this on your property, and I'm not going to leave a mess, and I'm going to close the gate, and I'm not going to let the cows out, and all of those things. Watching all that through the years and being on the landowner side really helped me when it came to doing the lease part. So I really have a good understanding of what you're talking about and feeling for it. So, that it is very, very true.
There's a sign out there, something that says if you find the gates open, leave it open. Mm-hmm. If it's closed, leave it closed. And that's probably like the first lesson I tell people.
That's right.
Because there's nothing worse than getting the call. Mm-hmm. Hey, you didn't close the gate. And now I'm chasing cows all over the place or something. That's like the worst feeling in the world.
10 o'clock at night or whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And if you thought you were I'm just going to go in here and I'll be right back out, it would still be wise to close the gate before
leave it exactly how you found it.
That cow's going to walk back into that gate before you come back.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's great.
Well, with 33 years and
almost 34.
Almost 34.
In July, it'll be 34.
Yeah, and the skill needed and the time to acquire the skill to be able to do that. In my mind, I'm thinking the new person that comes to the department as you're getting ready to go out. Is that something that's in a syllabus? Do they teach it? Do they have to go right along and learn how that works?
I think I could probably teach a class on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I would think you could.
And you could probably throw in lots of things that are based off of it. But even our new staff that they're so protective of our safety anymore, and but talking to people is supposed to be normal. And it's and if you're a biologist in Seattle, it might be a little different than over here, but it's still the same thing. You have to communicate, and it's about communication. And I find myself, I feel like my dad sometimes, and I over communicate, and mainly because I was too stubborn as a kid to listen, but I find myself over communicating a lot with people, not just within our agency, but also people, throughout in my people that I run into, landowners. It could be something issue that's going on, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because it really is important.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that being an acquired skill that somebody have to spend some time shadowing, right? You don't just walk up somebody's property and start doing whatever you're doing.
I remember when I applied for the permits for the shooting preserve that we shoot the pheasants on, that we release the pheasants on. Oh man, I'm going to forget his name now, but the biologist out of Wenatchee.
John,
yes. They sent the file to John, and I thought I was going to deal with Eric. And they sent the file to John to come up and look at the area, and I'm going, does John know this area? Because Eric knows this area. And so John calls me up and sets up the time when he's going to come. And I says, are you bringing Eric with you? And he goes, Eric Braaten? I says, yeah. I says, he lives closer than you. So I was really surprised that you're the one that's going to come up here and look at all this. And he goes, well, I said, so how many of these have you looked at? None. Well, so what are you looking for? I'm just coming up there to take a look. I says, I think it would be wise if we just bring Eric along. Let me call Eric and see if he'll come. And Eric was gracious enough to come up and rode around with us as we were looking around. And pretty soon I noticed I'm just driving, and Eric and John are talking back there, and they're taking care of everything. I'm just driving around. Yeah, we're going to hunt here. We're going over there. And so, but it paid. John was really good about it all.
Yeah, John's been great. And when John started, he had a lot of great skills, communication skills, but there was a lot of survey work and different things that we got to work together on over the years, and we've learned a lot from each other. And I think that there's a give and take with some of the people in my agency. There's certain things that I don't know or understand, but you kind of feed off of each other. And I think the one thing that I've always brought is that relationship importance, and to protect that, and to, if you do create something that's good, make sure you keep communicating with those people. Just like today, this morning, just giving out bugs, you would think that, it was like old home week. It was like, oh, hey, what have you been up to? And that's a loaded question, because that's either an hour or 2 hours, depending on the landowner or how much it's been. But like I was talking to Steve Thompson about his new grandbaby. We're talking about bugs and antelope, and then the next guy I'm talking about bugs, and then CRP issues, and different things. And then the next guy I'm talking about, I got an email about needing permission to go do ground squirrel surveys from one of our staff, and they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I said, well, but when I call your phone, there's no message machine. And they're like, yeah, there isn't. And I'm like, yeah, it's not working right, because I've been trying to leave messages. So I figured I'd just come out and see you. And they're like, well, we're going to look into that. And I said, could I have your cell phone number? And so, that way we get everybody on the same page, so that's just a day. That's just one day.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Well, and I think that, and you and I have done this in the past as well. There's landowners out there that both you and I work with. I work with them as hidden ranch outfitters. He works with them from the department, Fish and Wildlife, and some of those landowners. It's nice to have somebody confirm you. So I go and deal with them, and then they kind of question me because I'm coming at it from the landowner or from the outfitter business.
Yeah.
And then Eric comes in behind me and says the same thing. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then vice versa. And Eric and I have worked this. We've called each other and said, hey, you need to talk to this guy, and then Eric was out. They were going to do some old sharp-tailed leks. Go look at some old ones from 40-year-old maps and stuff. And
Oh, wow.
and so Eric calls and goes, can you tell him that it's okay for them to go out and look at the leks? They're
Like
not
a tag team.
Yeah, and so
routine, yeah.
and so we talk to him, and it's good to be able to do that and share that kind of stuff. The landowners are a unique breed, and especially farmers, because they've all had to boss themselves. They didn't have a corporate leader telling them how to do something or something like that. They didn't work for somebody else. They worked for themselves. So a lot of times they would talk themselves into things that weren't quite correct or weren't right or whatever. Because of my dad's working with Fish and Wildlife when they started the hunt by written permission only. That was right around the time Eric came on. And so we were working through those programs. And there was only a couple of landowners in the whole state that were doing it until they kind of got a good feel for it. And Eric was in on all the beginning of that. And my dad was. Well, then when I became an outfitter, the Fish and Wildlife came out and goes, whoa, you cannot be an outfitter because we have hunt by written permission only on your property. And Eric knew right where I was going. I guess we won't have hunt by written permission only on the property because we're going to be an outfitter. And so it was those kind of things. The funny thing is I was on the GMAC at the time. And so it was all kind of weird, somebody coming out and, well, we kind of talked about this in the GMAC. And so,
Right.
How all this works. But the landowners are, sometimes they're dealing with the information that they have.
Yeah.
The internet has made that a lot better and worse. Some of us have a degree in Google.
Oh, gosh.
That's my
Associate's
biology degree. is from Google.
There's lots of those.
There's a lot of those. Yeah. So it's an interesting deal. It's quite a job that Eric has.
We talked on the landowner podcast about they've been burned before too, right? I mean, we're just talking about maybe you talked yourself into the primrose path or this sounded good based on your research, but they've also had people dump stuff and show up. So they're a little sketchy or jumpy when somebody shows up with a new idea. And what I like listening to you guys is the job sounds like team building, being an advocate. I mean, it's some neat stuff, and outfitting has been team building and being an advocate. And then you add conservation, and it's such a, it's like, where was this on career day? This is a really cool
Well, Eric had to deal with it because
so.
there were some old habitat plots that you went around and renewed that were way old and hadn't been renewed for a long time. Some of you renewed, and then some we
Just the
put in some
40s
new
and
ones.
50s,
Yeah. And I can only imagine what it sounded like to you on your end when you were talking to the landowner, because when that landowner would see me at a growers meeting or something and they're going, can you believe that kid's coming out here talking about these habitat plots? They haven't taken care of them and the fence is down and cow was caught in it.
There was,
I'm like going,
I can only imagine.
There's so many different.
The new ideas are hard, so I mean, they just are, right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. There's just the landowners themselves. I've had to listen to people that worked in the county that retired that ticked somebody off and they didn't like our agency. But again,
30 years later, they're still mad.
What I learned is that my ears were my friend. And that listening, whether it was something I agreed with or not, it was worth my time and it paid dividends in the long. And I wasn't doing it just to do it, but I was doing it mainly just to create that bond with that landowner. So and then once cell phones came out, oh my gosh, now I get texts, and now my phone blows up, and so they have more access to me. You
Yeah.
know, hey, what's going on here?
And I'm guessing the calls and the texts are not, hey,
what's your
everything's going
commission
great
doing
over here.
or what? What's going on?
You are the department
Yeah.
expert.
Well, yeah. Well, you have to
Punching bag.
you have to, and when we hire a lot of staff that might not hunt or might not fish, and some of our programs revolve around those subjects, and it's really important for them to understand why a pheasant hunter's mad because of some change in a regulation or something,
Right.
and so they have to involve themselves in getting all that stuff. But the hunting program, I used to take it early in my career. If a landowner said, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, I took it personally. And now I'm like, okay. I don't let it bother me,
I can see
because
that.
I know it's not me.
Yeah.
It's something that the landowner's not comfortable in doing, and it's like, yeah, it's you can get out of it, no
Just
problem.
an option for
that
you,
type of
yeah.
We'll do something else. Well, yeah, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've learned to kind of live with certain things, and that I know I'm doing a good job out there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Appreciate all you do for the advocacy and stuff.
And
That's
Eric's
really
raised a
cool.
family here. You
Yep.
you've bought a place. You live here in the area. And
Well, I was living in a ranch house that rent free from your dad up north of
first
Lady.
how you got married when you were living in there, I have no idea.
I'm surprised I'm still alive, to be honest, because I think there was a lot of different issues with that. I think there was some hantavirus and some other things that I don't know. But that one winter I lived through, and I only lived there one winter, was really bad. But I brought my wife, and we were dating at the time, and I said, well, they said they'd sell me this in the 90 acres, and she's like, no, we're moving in town. So I appreciate my wife more and more.
Yeah, she's smarter all the time.
There you go.
Exactly. There you go.
So-
and then his son went to school.
Yeah, ACH and local. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun career. I mean, I wouldn't do anything different, to be honest. I mean, and it's really tough to say, I mean, I can get up and actually go out and enjoy my job. It's a pretty awesome job, to be honest. So it's stressful at times because of politics or funding or meetings or training.
Oh yeah.
I
think your
have to
wife-
take ladder training, and I don't even use a ladder. But I mean, that's the government. I mean, it is
I've
what it
taken
is.
the ladder training. Yeah, I know all about that.
I'm
What am I
actually
gonna
an
climb at?
expert by now. 34 years of ladder training.
If you don't get hurt, you end up teaching the class.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So-
Oh my god.
Well, one of the things that you did since you've been here, and I remember this way back, you started the first National Wild Turkey Federation chapter in this area
cool.
that I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Years ago.
we're just about the end of turkey season. So how's
Yeah.
that all playing?
So back in the day, back in the 90s, I was one of the few licensed trappers. We had to get licensed through Illinois for explosive, and we actually moved turkeys around the whole state. And so I was one of the few. Our program, Upland Wildlife Restoration, there's about six or seven of us that would get together in the winter, and we would live in the Sherman Creek Hatchery in Colville. And we'd get up early and go trap turkeys and move turkeys around different parts of the state. And then I helped write the habitat evaluations for getting me and an old cohort, Don Garrett, up north. He was retired now. But we got the habitat stuff approved through the committees and all the right people, and we were able to put our turkey releases in Okanagan County.
Oh.
So some of the problem turkey populations might be partially my fault, but I don't know. But we did
We're
put,
going to trace it back to you.
but we did put a lot of, and then what happened with that effort was there was this new energy, and the Turkey Federation at the time had a project called Target 2000 where they were trying to get huntable populations of turkeys in all 50 states was kind of the goal by year 2000. And so with part of that effort, we were able to get all three subspecies of turkeys put in Washington. So we got the eastern, which is on the coast. mainly south of Olympia, and we had some up north of Aberdeen and a few turkeys up by out of Everett in the Arlington area, but predominantly south of Olympia and towards Vancouver in Cathlamet and some of that country. And then we always had birds from the 60s. We had a lot of early turkey releases in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, but the birds they put out weren't very many. It was like very few. When we started doing it in the late 90s, we were doing a 1 tom per 7 hens, and we were trying that ratio, and it worked a lot better. So we tried to stick to that as much as we could, but I don't know how many thousands of turkeys we moved out of Colville, because you'd get a winter flock of like 200 to 300 birds, and we'd go in and you would shoot the net and you get like 40 in a shot, so we'd take those 40 and we'd move them somewhere, and then we'd go back a couple weeks later and shoot it again. And the landowners liked it because there was less turkeys bothering their cattle and all that.
Eating all their feed.
We had one guy out of Sedonia that I think he averaged 350 birds a winter.
Wow.
Coming in, and they were eating his, he fed cottonseed to his milking cows. And so he really enjoyed us there. We would hide in the milking shed and wait for the rockets to go.
Oh my gosh.
So the turkey chapters, those came out of kind of this effort that the Turkey Federation was helping with these releases and providing the nets and the boxes and stuff like that.
Very cool.
So the local chapters started up, and I think there ended up being around 13 chapters at one time. There still is a lot of chapters in the state, and we have some new energy. But the Easterns, they kind of helped us get the Easterns from different states, and that cost money. And so the Turkey Federation chapters kind of helped foot that bill back to this federation.
I gotcha.
So yeah, it was. So we started the Lincoln County Longbeards in '94, and had it for me and my wife did it for 8 or 9 years, and it got to be a pretty large undertaking to do, because the more turkeys you had out in the landscape, you had more interest in turkeys, more turkey hunters, and we were raising lots of money at the banquets and putting that in the super fund, and we were doing projects where we could. We were spending money on prescribed burning up in the Forest Service, anywhere we could spend money to help turkeys out in Washington, and then pay down our bills that we owed the Turkey Federation. But it was an awesome part of my life to be involved with, and I still love turkey hunting today.
I was going to say,
still am involved, still am a member of Turkey Federation, been a member for years. So, yeah. And
you raised Logan to shoot turkeys.
Yeah. He was coming to turkey camp when he was a little kid.
Yep.
Enjoying it. Just hearing that gobble in the spring, I think is, I always tell people that, it's a success if you hear a gobble in the morning. You don't have to kill a bird. You just know that as long as you can go out and hear one, you know they're there. Now that I'm getting older, the kill isn't like this year we took out a bunch of new hunters and got them introduced into hunting, and it was really fun. Yeah, it was awesome.
That's cool. Now, we're friends with Dwayne England here at the HRO Adventures podcast. And Dwayne, I know he's come over and filmed a couple hunts and hunted with you.
Yeah, I've hunted with him a couple times.
And, I was hoping to get him over here, and so he'd maybe do some filming with you, and then we'd get him on the podcast and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to do that, because
he's
really kind of a fun guy to be around, and he's still learning, and so we're trying to feed off of each other when we're filming and stuff. But the last bird he killed, I knew there was a bird in this area, and he was needing one for film, and so I said, well, we're going to have to sit in the blind, and it's going to be probably a long wait, because this bird comes in the afternoon, and it was like super hot, and I had the camera guy, me and him in the blind, and I bet
Portable
you
sauna.
6 hours in the blind.
Oh my!
And I had half my clothes off,
Oh my god!
and those guys were asleep and nodding off, and finally, right when it started to cool down. The footage is awesome on video, but it comes out of the sun, and Matt, the cameraman, saw it, the corner of his eye, and so Dwayne got I think he got it like 20 yards, 15 yards.
Oh
20
wow,
yards.
real close to the
Wow.
blind.
But he got it with
Yeah.
a 410. So
Yep.
Oh, that's even better.
yeah, and so it was an awesome hunt and awesome to get it on video. But it wasn't like, you know, it was hard hunting. It was just hard waiting.
Hard waiting. Yeah.
Because they love to strut in this one little corner of the field, and we had a camera up, and we always knew that they were in there, you know, at certain times. So technology's kind of helped us kind of line it all up. But
you go.
you still had to shoot the bird.
Oh yeah.
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 And we were calling. It's a good place to call from because you're up on a little hill, and you can really the calls kind of go off. But it was a fun hunt.
So now you've been doing this since in the 90s when you started, well, even before, but I mean, since you started the deal. So you've been doing this 30 some years. What, you've accumulated some pro staff status and all that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, years ago, Jason Phelps with Phelps Game Calls. He had his own company or own group. Him and some buddies. They started Primetime Outdoors, and it's on YouTube. And still, the old videos, and they were hunting in different parts of the state, and they wanted to do a turkey hunt. And I was in the early days of the internet. You know, they started coming out with these hunt forums, and there's some funny stories about these hunt forums, but it's called HROA. And on HROA, you can have like a little character name, you know, instead of Rusty, it would be like, you know, Old Cowboy or whatever, you know, you want to put.
Okay.
No dig.
That wouldn't be what I would pick, but that's okay.
But my name was Yelp.
Oh, yeah.
For turkey, you know, and so that was my character name. But anyways, Jason picked Jason because he wanted to be normal. He didn't want a pet name. But anyways, that's kind of how we met, you know. And so he invited me to go turkey hunting that one time, and so in that conversation, he was starting to talk about building calls and stuff like that. And I had done a few calls myself. I did some turkey call stuff, just in my spare time, just kind of dinking around in the winter, trying to make turkey calls, and sold a few, but I didn't get really serious into it. But I was showing him what I was doing, and you know, we were talking while we were doing this hunt. He invited me to come over and hunt, so we hunted in Stevens County. Filmed a couple. They went out and hunted and killed a few birds, and then we called a nice bird in and got it on film. And then he started not too long after that getting into the call business and doing all that stuff, and he just kind of put me on pro staff. I didn't even ask for it, you know, because we were kind of friends at the time.
Awesome.
And so I've been on their pro staff for a while now, but it's been an interesting road because his business got bought out by Meat Eater, and so now it's like this big conglomerate.
Yeah.
He has a whole
It's
elk
a whole
side
different
so
business
many
model
things.
now than you know
what he had,
doing it out of his garage or shop. So
It's a little big.
but it's fun to get together. We just got done in a hunt in Idaho a couple weeks ago. I went over and we had the Phelps team and Turkey Federation staff
Oh, wow.
out of South Carolina. They came out and they brought 2 biologists / photographers and to try to get some footage for some upcoming articles, maybe in their magazines or, you know, different things.
Right.
And so I had a video guy following me around from Phelps, and then I had a photographer following me around trying to hunt turkeys in Idaho. And it was like,
It's a lot of people
all I
trekking
can hear
through
is
the
shutter
woods.
speeds.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to call, and you know, it was kind of annoying, but we got a couple birds on film, and we got I got to hunt Idaho my first time, and it was beautiful state. Lots of elk, lots of deer. I did a habitat segment for them on clear cuts and logging. We actually found an old growth area where there was no. It looked like a elk or deer yard.
Oh, okay.
You know, no sunlight's reaching the floor. I mean, it just looked dead underneath there. There was a few cool things about it. I mean, it's kind of a cool habitat type, but we kind of focused on, you know, what logging does to the nesting cover for turkeys, you know, in the West, and, you know, how important that is, you know, and the type of things we do different out here than other parts of the nation, you know, as far as logging.
Right.
And Idaho is a big, you know, logging state, and so they, you know, sounds like we're going to be doing more logging, in the future.
Yeah.
So, but it's all good, when it comes to getting that new succession type habitat,
Right.
But yeah, so being on Phelps, I get a few turkey calls like I need anymore, but they always come out with some new stuff. But it's been a fun ride. And then the turkey stuff itself has just been. I do the Facebook group on with
Yeah.
Washington Wild Turkey.
Been a big fan of that for years. Yeah. Or however long I've been doing it.
And I started that just because I wasn't doing the turkey chapters so much. Even though as a member, there just wasn't a lot of online,
Yeah, you're right.
information on turkeys in our state. And so I just started this group thinking that, it'd be kind of cool to have an informational type, back and forth. And because there was a lot of people that were good turkey hunters that wanted to share,
Right. Right.
And I try to limit it to just non-guides, because guides want the big audience, to sell hunts and stuff. And I wanted it to be more family orientated. And so
Yeah, I love it.
We've kind of kept it that way.
Yeah, it's really cool. I look forward to it.
We try to do all kinds of different things, talk about different things.
That isn't your only Facebook page, though. You started another one too, didn't you?
Yeah, Washington Walleye.
Yeah.
That's another one. Well, I live on Banks Lake, so
Right.
Gordon Steinmetz it's all his fault, Big Wally.
There we go.
We were friends, and he was like, "You need a long boat."
Well, before we shift to fishing, the gear guys always want to know what kind of. You said Dwayne was using the 410, so what kind of shotgun? What kind of shot? Are you using any of the mix of stuff? What are you using?
Sure. Yeah. So on a lot of the different gear that we have now for turkey, the technology has increased the type of ammo that we have. So we're using tungsten. You can still kill birds with lead. There's no, if you're using shotguns, there's archery equipment now with different broadheads and, different setups. The old way of using, like a 12 gauge shotgun with 3-inch or 3.5-inch, fours or sixes was always the norm. You wanted to kill the turkey as fast and efficiently as possible. You didn't want no suffering, so that was kind of the objective. Now with tungsten, which holds it's heavier, denser than lead, and it actually holds its weight through the target, and it doesn't deform like lead. So it actually, in a choked shotgun, will actually create a devastating blow.
It has more kinetic energy to it, right? Nothing's dissipating
crazy.
as it hits. Yeah,
And
super cool. Oh.
But tungsten isn't cheap. And
No.
it's around $8 to $10 a shell.
You get like a bank loan when you get a box of shells. Yeah.
So, but with the size shot, you can go down to they're mixing size 9 and 10 shot now with a hybrid, which is like pepper almost the size of it.
Yeah.
And you're getting like 500 plus pellets a shell in some of the different loads, which is compared to lead is way more. So you're getting more energy, more density, and more pellets with the TSS. So that's why it's been pretty popular. But the first couple of years it came out, it was really hard to find. And then now most of the manufacturers are
doing
doing
it.
it. So this year I shot... I've shot Federal in the past. I've shot some Remington, but this year I went with Winchester Longbeard TSS, and it had some really good reviews. And I got a new 20 gauge. Bought a new 20 gauge. The 410 was great, but the 20 gauge I was like, it's still a smaller gun, so I wanted that, especially going to Idaho. I didn't want to miss a bird on film. So I took my 410 in case I had an opportunity. But, if you're in a blind or something with a kid, a 410 is the way to go because they're lightweight. The kids can use them.
Easy.
We had a lot of female hunters this year in the camps up north on my buddy's lease that we were helping out with. And and it was great for them. You know, we had a couple semi-auto 410s, which are really sweet guns,
Right.
you know, but you know, I like the single shot because it's kind of like muzzleloader hunt. You only have one shot.
Yep.
So you're going to make a really good shot your first time, or
Makes you think,
you're going
doesn't
hungry, you know.
Yep, it makes you think. How about sights? Using a red dot or anything on the shotgun?
Yeah, nowadays you can use electronic sight. So we got a red dot sight. I use a True Glow on mine. It's a little cheaper than like some of the. They're Leupold, Burris, you know. What's the other? There's a couple more Holosun. There's a couple different ones that are really popular with turkey guys.
Right.
And they run on battery power, but you can adjust the windage and elevation and do all that. So.
Awesome.
The Snoqualmie Inn by Hotel America is the perfect location to stay at when visiting the Snoqualmie Valley. With 99 guest rooms, the inn can accommodate travel sports teams and seminars in addition to valley visitors. Enjoy the breakfast buffet, fitness center, and indoor pool before starting your activities. Coaches and parents alike will enjoy the spacious meeting rooms and lounging areas with food and coffee retailers, all within steps of the front door. Use promo code SNOWPOD for 12% off. Teams contact Lori Hay for reservations and discounts. Make the Snoqualmie Inn part of your stay. And don't forget to use the promo code SNOWPOD, that's SNOPOD in all caps.
Well, Eric is not only a turkey whisperer, but he's a walleye wizard as well. Join us in the next episode where we discuss Eric's expertise with walleye on the east side, including Rufus Woods and Banks Lake, as well as we dig into Rusty's calendar, so stay tuned for part 2 on episode 10 with the HRO Adventures podcast.